welcome back, guys. We're back with Miles Kingdon. For those of you that don't know Miles yet, you really should get to know him.
Yes.
He's a dear friend of mine, so I'm honored today to be here to showcase him and let you have a little taste of what Miles has to offer.
Yeah.
Miles has been a cowboy for over 40 years, and I mean the real deal,
That's
like
right.
a cow boss. So we're just so happy to be here. This is Kylie Bartell.
Hi.
I'm Alicia Bradburn. We're the hosts of the Horseman's Hot Seat, which, contrary to the name, is really about letting you guys get to know these wonderful people that have come to collaborate at Horse Expo Canada,
Yes.
share a little bit about who they are. So without further ado,
Yes.
we will get started, Miles, because this is about you.
Okay.
He's like, if we must. Okay, so Miles, we want to know, what is your definition of a soft feel?
This coach is pretty good.
That's a soft feel.
Yeah. Oh, there's Clay. He came.
He came to check
Every
you
time I
out.
look at this thing, it reminds me of Hugh McClellan's interview with me, and I felt like I was staring down the bore of a 44.
He's talking about the microphone. I told him to think of it as an ice cream cone.
Yeah, something sweet.
Anyhow.
So, soft feel to me is just not like at one time we thought about it as release to the pressure, give to the pressure. And I think soft feel's got to run through the body from how we sit on the horse, how we ride the horse. Our hands send signals to the face, the neck, from the neck to the feet, through the shoulder. And if we don't load them shoulders up, and the back end feels free to engage rather than being the actual turning apparatus, which it is not, then we know the nuchal ligaments are soft, the thoracic sling, their shoulders are soft, the shoulders are not loaded up. And it begins with, from the time we work with that horse as a baby, even before we put the halter on. I'm glad to see people doing things like imprinting babies, young horses, from whatever age, because a 5-year-old can still be a colt. I have horses at home that, 9, 10 years old, they're still a colt because they just don't have the experience. And that's okay. It's just because they haven't been out to work yet. And sometimes if you don't have them prepared for work, you end up pulling on them. And that part will stay with them unless you can change that ride with your ride.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Miles came to work with a colt that I had, and at that time he was probably 1.5 years, 2 years old. He'd already had a halter on, but hadn't been worked with very much at all. And I knew something in my gut. I had actually just met Miles, but something in my gut told me it was really important to get him to come and help me, actually just with getting him better, leading him, just haltering and ground manners. And it's made such a huge difference in the way that you start even just halter training a horse. To build a horse. Like, I'd like to build a bridle horse, but I'm just so grateful that I think somebody was looking out for me, knowing to make that connection and start at that very base level.
Soft feel should be something that we know stays with the horse. You don't have to make big moves because the horse will react sooner because they're soft, and it's here.
Yeah.
And so much of what we do with their feet is here, such as working through the feet to get to the mind. And then the mind can stay soft and the body can react far sooner. They don't have to make as fast of moves if they respond when you lift, when you give your signal.
Yeah. That makes so much sense, just to be able to really, I think sometimes we get lost in the busyness and the bigness and trying to get the things
Yes.
done, and there's
Yes.
so much that can be accomplished in the small details with more of that soft feel.
The second part of that question, Miles, was how did you develop your sense of feel and timing?
Buying real estate, a lot of contact with the ground. And this is the only way you can learn it. I'm kidding. Timing, I guess it began with a little boy on the prairie in Saskatchewan riding the chore horse bareback in, bringing the feeder steers in and the milk cow, and wondering if I affected the cow, that horse, by leaning in for the horse to go that way, or leaning away from that shoulder for the horse to go that way. And riding bareback, I felt that shoulder lift underneath me, knowing full well, even 65 pounds at the time, that I'm affecting that horse has to lift me to go.
Yes.
And so that's where it began, I think.
Well, it just makes me think too, so it wasn't in a lesson, wasn't anyone really telling you what to do, it was just in that bareback young, how old would you have been at that point?
8, 9 years old, I guess. Yeah.
So just like the intuition still very much.
Yeah.
Well, it was, even after when I started teaching, which I never thought I'd be doing this, but when I started doing this, I didn't think I had the knowledge to do this, because I didn't have any out-of-the-book learning or professional instruction. It was all, I watched other people, and the horse told me if it was right or not. And I did learn from a lot of people about timing and feel, because even, like Peter Campbell said one time, not even, and he worked with Tom a lot, and not even timing begins without feel. So feel is base of everything.
Yeah.
Feel is, I can elaborate just a little bit in one statement. Having ridden the horse this many years, and I drew a wage at this on the cow outfits for some really rough old guys, and some really good hands for about 50 years for a wage. And I'm to the point now where, without having the out-of-the-book learning, which I felt like I was lacking that, but I wasn't. I tried things with the horse and told me if it was wrong, or he told me if it was right. If I had to keep on repeating things too much, I knew I was wrong.
Yes.
And now it feels like they live on a whole different plane, a whole different plateau, and I feel like I'm peeking over the edge of that, and I can see how they communicate, and it's like their thought process is on a different dimension,
Right.
and that's feel.
Yeah.
It's a great way to describe it.
Very much so, and I really resonate with that idea that, like, letting the horse tell you when you've got it right, really taking their thoughts and their feedback into consideration can be.
Oh yeah, if you won't have feel unless you're actually looking for it, and everybody has the ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm curious, do you mind telling us a little bit more about the importance of self-carriage in the work you do with horses?
Yeah, self-carriage begins when I'm not controlling the horse through a bit and spurring him the direction I need to go, or creating that flex with my hands. If I can ride on balance and I can feel it, I don't know a better way to explain it, it's like a bubble of energy. It's riding that horse's center, and there becomes a center between me and the horse. And it's like the bubble on a level, side to side and front to back. And I try to get that with our rides. And when I can ride like that and them shoulders loosen up and I can see the jaw soften, and before that the lips softened, but before that the ears softened, and I see that flex in the pole come in from the horse voluntarily, I mean, you have to, when you ask for that carriage that you're looking for, release and ride it with your body. Instead of pulling, the horse is going to brace up because they think they did something wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that horse is scared of you, but they don't want to do the wrong thing. And so self-carriage begins in them moments when you see those things. Is it possible to ride a horse through them fast rides that way? Yes, but you need to start with the slow ones. You can ride a horse that's prepared to charge through the bush after a cow. You got to rope it and wait for an open spot to get a loop on it. And they're all built to do that. But they don't know if you want subtle until you present it. And so subtle requests become subtle responses. You can still go do that fast stuff, but gradually you get to a point which I call the seventh balance, where you are able to ride that horse at them speeds and lift your reins and have him acknowledge a signal. You might not have a slide and stop, but he's acknowledging the signal and he starts acting on it.
The amount of, I think of the word attunement, but also just being so dialed in, right? Like I just think of that ability to give those subtle signals. It's almost like that you have the thought and the horse is already doing it. To be that in sync must be such an incredible feeling.
If you have the ability to give subtle requests and wait for their response, they will learn to wait. And that is a very important part of working with a horse. When you're doing a fast job, obviously working cattle, sorting in a gate, sorting cattle, maybe weaning time in the fall, you might not be able to give that horse that time. So you do when you have the time. You need to discipline yourself to wait for that horse, or he can't wait for you. He don't know you want it. They just mirror everything you've put out.
Yes. I love that. You have to be able to wait for the horse if at some point you want the horse to wait for
Oh
you.
yeah,
So
that's
good.
very important.
That's a great quote.
Yeah.
Something that really stood out to me in your answer about self-carriage was the word voluntary. I just wanted to say that again so everybody could hear that it wasn't something that was contrived or forced.
And that comes with a subtle request and waiting for the response. If it's the wrong thing, it doesn't matter. A young person I knew in my youth, I was young,
Still are.
and the thing is, the horse will, we get frustrated because we missed it, so we get tight. Well, then the horse thinks he's in trouble, so you just got the horse in trouble because you didn't cut yourself some slack to start with.
That's good.
And so you need to be kind to yourself, otherwise the horse feels that. Even if things are busy, and of course this comes with confidence from worked time spent on the job, training, or working with the horse. But you have to realize they can be 14 years old and still be a baby inside at times. They are. And so we need to be able to kind of groom that. You know, that's like our little kid. And some of us kind of, we feel like that is our little kid.
Well, I wanted to get your take on a saying from Tom Dorrance, which was, he liked to say you would have to get to the mind to get to the feet. And I wanted to hear your take on that, Miles.
Yeah, you do need to get to the mind to get to the feet, and that's what I mean by subtle requests. What we put out, the horse mirrors, as I've said. But if we don't offer a subtle request and wait for his response and release when the feet go, release on the feet, then the only way to get through to the mind is by the learned behavior pattern, We're not working just on feel anymore. When you're working on feel, it's something that we've done. And we all do too much. I work on things myself. And that's the beauty of getting older. You find something else to work on yourself with, eh? The old Spanish had a saying. One of them was to ride the bridled stock horse well brought you closer to God, and to be close to God helped you ride this bridled horse better. And it doesn't mean it's a specific congregation. It means there's something sacred in this. And we need to teach ourselves to balance on that horse and feel center, know where center is, and ride that center. Send a subtle signal and wait for a response. If it's the wrong one, set it up again, but release on the feet, and now he's with you here.
It makes me think of how important dialogue or a back and forth exchange is for building connection, relationship, balance. Like, I think sometimes we get into trouble sometimes with that one-way thought if we're trying to talk, but we're not really hearing or listening or having that back. And so just as you're describing, that's what's coming to my mind, is just this really conversational type of exchange with the horse where you put out an idea, you wait for that to come back, and it's
Can I add to that?
Please do.
When I'm riding my colt at home,
Yep.
I've got a nice big Andalusian colt at home. And the first, I ride him in a hackamore because it's a premier signal headset tool. And I'd like him to go to the right. So I pick up the signal to go to the right, but he goes to the left. I got to change and go with that as if it was my idea.
Right.
Because I've already won then. He's going that direction. This is the signal that accompanies that motion. Rather than me pull, and get him to come the way I want him to go.
Yeah.
I need to go with him, and it becomes that dance I'm looking for, because it is.
Yep.
And so now he knows that to go that way, that signal accompanies that direction.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. I'm wondering, this is a bit of more of a personal question, but do you think, Miles, that there's a spiritual aspect to horsemanship? And if so, can you explain?
When I was a kid, I used to watch them horses. There'd be 7 or 8 of them out on grass grazing. And 2 of them would throw their heads up, and they'd walk together, and they'd start itching each other's back. And I was just a little kid, and I thought to myself, how did they do that? And the minute we think something, if I think about little Ali Barma, my buddy in Saudi Arabia, I'm going to get a text from him a couple minutes later.
Yes.
So this other dimension, I'm just going to out with it.
Yep.
I believe it. This other dimension, it's the other side of this. We don't know it looks like this, but it's the same place. And so that thought process goes out there, and them horses, they're on it because they don't have anything to get in the way of that. We do. We can still do it. But we got so many things getting in the way of instant gratification. To me, instant gratification is something that I just shod my horse, and after about a half hour, I can stand up straight again. And because I ain't no kid, I'm still shoeing my horses. And so I look at that and I think, now that's instant gratification. It looks pretty good. It doesn't necessarily mean to me that Google is instant gratification. I use it, but that's not the same thing. It's something that you've earned through feel, through desire. And desire is the root of so many things. And like that old Spanish saying, it's something sacred. And when you can start to communicate with that horse in that way, there's so much more sacred about it that we've all missed. And we're all looking for, I believe we're all looking for it.
Right. And when you catch glimpses of it, when you kind of get close enough to touch it for a moment, I don't know, I think back on some of the best rides or encounters I've had with horses, and it's usually getting close to that moment. It's hard to stay in it. You're right. There's so much going on for us that gets in the way, but they're just so pure in the way they show up.
So by not, I think observation is one of the greatest things that we have that we don't always use to the as much as we could.
Right.
And observation is a type of feel. I mean, it's we're not, you know, today we're in a day when we can talk about our feelings, and I got my feelings hurt over this, and I'm waiting for the great opportunity to be offended. But feel is something to me that's it's out in the next dimension. It's right here. And the horse feels it, and the horse knows it, and we don't recognize it the way we need to.
Yeah. And I think when we get closer to seeing it the way the horse does, we get healthier, we get better. Like, it's just, and maybe that's why we keep going back to them and spending so much time with them. It does something, you know, that's something about the horse is good for the, I know, it's like not even the outside of the horse. I was going to expand. I know the quote is that there's something good about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of a person, but I think it's even the outside and the inside of the horse that's good for the outside and the inside of us.
So this horse, I'll just speak of Chance.
Yeah.
He's one of the horses I brought this weekend. And I mean, my wife Possum and I, we built our business on his back and feet and his mind. And he's not a horse that likes people as such. He never did. He's the boss horse. He dominates everybody out in the pasture. But he's gotten to know his purpose, and he knows his job. And there's been a certain time when I was at Alicia's barn and I was doing, I said something that I probably shouldn't have, because I was first learning how to teach, and I got really uncomfortable, and he came walking over and stood beside me. And it's not like, I don't mean to make this sound like a woo-woo tale or nothing, but it's just he knows me and I know him. We've worked a lot together. And so I think it's really, for him, it's like going to Broadway, you know. And so I think it's a great deal for him that we have built that business with his horse on his back and feet, but the way that we get along. And he is who he is. He's different DNA, and so am I. We just got to accept that, who that is. And there's another Spanish saying that the old timers, the old vaqueros used to say, and a lot of the older timers that I worked with a long time ago, that you can always tell a horse that had a heavy-handed younger rider on, short-tempered or tired or hungry or whatever, all the things that contribute to us not being as patient as we should or as we could be. And that's something we need to work on. It's just a place where you are. But you could always tell, on the other hand, a horse that when business got really picked up, they stayed calm. It spoke of who they had spent their time with. It's just something to work on, that's all.
I like that.
So Miles, you are sharing here at this expo and have dedicated a lot of your life to sharing about the California bridle horse tradition, and also have started an association, the Canadian Bridle Horse Association, which I am a part of, yes, and many of the other members and organizers are here as well, just because we are all passionate about sharing this way of being with horses and not letting this tradition die off. But something for those that maybe don't know as much about that, the way that it's described a lot is the signal balance ride. How would you describe that to people that maybe have never heard of this style of working with horses and riding horses?
I guess the first thing I can do to open your eyes is tell you that the hackamore, the bozell, is the best tool known to man that telling the horse that you've got no control.
Yeah.
And really it is, because when I was a kid, I had my first bozell. I paid $67 for it, and had all kinds of runaways because I was holding. It's the opposite of control. So when you want your dog to go outside to have a pee or go to lay down, do you have to go and stomp on him all the time to get him to lay down? You got to signal. You got to command or request. And it is very similar to riding the horse. Now, when the horse is going 40 miles an hour across a flat, you're not going to think, well, I've got to give this little signal and he's going to come to a slide and stop. Well, you got to prepare for that. He has to know that's what you want. And even a horse that's been 9, 10 years old on a ranch and had so many different riders on his back, so now he becomes the only bilingual part of this union between horse and rider because he's learned the last lingo, and now he's going to learn your lingo, now he's going to learn the next guy's lingo. And when do we learn to read him and ride him where his feet are?
Yeah, I just like to emphasize that. I remember when I first met you, you said that the horse is the only bilingual one. And it just, so true. Just such a good point.
Well, and when I hear that thought too, it makes me feel more motivated to be more bilingual as well. This idea of like, I want to pay that same respect or try to understand them more on their terms as well. You know, it makes for better conversation.
So observation and maybe the lack of being able to put things into words can be a benefit to you because it gives you that time. You're just thinking, you're just sitting, you're not speaking, you're not talking, your hands aren't moving around, and something will happen. And it's good to be critical thinking because you wonder, why did that happen? Where did it come from? And if you sit there and work on them little things, the horse is going to start opening up to you more. They just do. That's what they understand.
Right. Yeah. Makes me think too of just in psychology research, when we study how do we build trust with people, we notice that it's actually more about the small, seemingly insignificant moments that add up over time, as opposed to a one-time big decision like I trust you or I don't. And that makes me think of with the horses too. You're not only building relationship, but you're really earning street credit with them or building trust with them when you are having all those small moments add up over time where you really feel
Okay,
them.
so can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, with a horse,
Yeah.
we just can't say, okay, where are we going to go today?
Yeah.
We have to prepare. Of course, we have to prepare. But like the case with my colt, my Andalusian colt, he wanted to go left when I wanted to go right. Well, so be it. Go with it. And so the next time he wanted to go to the right and I was given him signal to go to the left, I changed and go to the right. He didn't win the argument, I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't no argument. He chose a way.
Yeah.
I said, this is the signal. He chose another way. I said, this is the signal. And it takes a little bit of time. I'm not going to go and ride a course on him tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'm really setting him up like a pool game. Even if you don't feel like you won now, you're good setting yourself up for a really great ride a couple days, a couple rides down the road.
Right. I
Yeah.
like that idea of the setup.
You really have to believe that.
There's a long game at play here. This isn't just about
That's right.
this small moment.
Yeah.
I like it.
Something else that you said that really struck me was watching is listening.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's all feel. Observation is so very important because it is listening.
I know some of the old timers that you would have learned from maybe wouldn't put things into words. And it almost seems like there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, a little something about cowboy culture where it's earned, the knowledge, the respect, of course, experience. So whether it was because it wasn't in their nature to be wordy about it, or if it was to do with that point of the culture, you probably had to learn so much of what you know by watching.
One of my favorite mentors, Orville, I wrote about him in, well, both of them books, I think. Him and Roy Williams always said, you should teach this stuff, lad. And I said, no, I'm never going to do anything but be a cowboy. I was already living on the cutting edge. And he said, I said, I don't know how to put things into words anyways. And I'm still trying to get better at it. But he said, if people can't watch by learning, they don't want it bad enough.
Wow.
Wow, I like that. That's good. Well, you know, I think that's maybe our takeaway final wrap-up moment because we are out of time for today. I feel like this time with you has
Sadly.
just flown by. Yeah, I feel like we could
We can
keep
go another
going.
5 minutes, can't we?
We can, although I think there are some other things happening that people are going to need to get to. Although what I would like, before we say goodbye to you from this stage here right now, do you mind just letting people know where they can find you over the weekend if they want to talk with you more, and maybe just give us a bit more information about some of the things you've got going on here at the Expo this weekend?
We do have a booth. I think it's under Miles Kingdon Horsemanship.
Yep.
My wife sets all this stuff up, and the people over here have been managing it for me. They were the ones who kept me from driving back home yesterday. And we're going to do a presentation this afternoon, 4 till 5:30.
Awesome.
And then for the next 2 days, we are on as well. I
Right.
have a group of young ladies who are riding with me and make me feel comfortable in there.
And for those of you that don't know, Miles has written 2 books, and he has a lot of quality gear in his booth as well. So if you want to learn more about him, that's a great way to start.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miles, for your
Well,
time
I'm
and your insights.
Really honored that you had me up here, actually, and yeah, I'm really quite happy to be here.
Wasn't as bad as you thought.
No, it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Awesome, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope to catch you on the next one.